There is a type of person who is almost impossible to disturb, not because they are emotionless and not because life treats them gently, but because they possess something far more unsettling: emotional immunity. You can criticize them, doubt them, ignore them, even attempt to provoke them, yet their internal state barely shifts. No visible frustration, no defensive tension, no emotional leakage. And strangely, this calmness does not feel peaceful to others. It feels heavy, uncomfortable, almost intimidating. Because human interaction is built on reactions. We expect expressions, signals, feedback. We expect proof that our words have impact. But when someone refuses to emotionally bend, the social dynamic changes. The usual psychological rules stop working. What should create pressure creates silence. What should trigger emotion creates stillness. And in that stillness, something unexpected emerges, a quiet form of power that most people sense, yet rarely understand. You've likely encountered this kind of presence before, even if you didn't fully understand what you were witnessing in the moment. Someone who didn't react the way people normally do. Maybe you expected irritation but saw composure. Maybe you expected defensiveness but met indifference. And what should have felt like a neutral exchange somehow left you unsettled. This reaction is not accidental. It is deeply psychological. Human beings are wired to read emotional signals. In everyday life, reactions act as social confirmation. When we speak, we expect subtle feedback, a shift in tone, a change in expression, some visible acknowledgement that our presence has influenced another mind. It reassures us, it stabilizes our sense of social reality. But when that feedback disappears, the brain begins searching for meaning. Did the words fail? Did the message miss its target? Or is the other person operating from a level of internal stability that resists disturbance altogether? This is where discomfort quietly grows, because emotional non-reactivity breaks expectation. It denies the usual rhythm of interaction. And when predictable patterns collapse, uncertainty replaces comfort. The silence feels heavier than argument. The calmness feels sharper than anger. Not because anything dramatic occurred, but because something invisible shifted. The sense of psychological control. Long before modern psychology attempted to name these dynamics, Niccolò Machiavelli observed the raw mechanics of human behavior with unsettling clarity. His writings were never truly about politics alone. They were about power, perception, and the fragile architecture of human reactions. Beneath strategy and leadership, he repeatedly pointed toward a deeper truth. People are constantly measuring one another. In every interaction, whether social, professional, or personal, individuals scan for signals, confidence or hesitation, strength or vulnerability, control or instability, and emotions more than words become the most revealing indicator of all. A reaction exposes pressure. A defensive tone exposes insecurity. A visible frustration exposes internal disturbance. Machiavelli understood something that remains uncomfortable even today. Power is rarely seized through force alone. It often emerges through composure, through the ability to remain psychologically grounded when others expect emotional movement. Because stability alters perception, and perception quietly reshapes hierarchy. When a person demonstrates that their internal state cannot be easily influenced, the social equation shifts. They become harder to predict, harder to manipulate, harder to psychologically corner. Not louder, not aggressive, but subtly dominant. And this is where emotional untouchability transforms from personality trait into strategic advantage, a form of silent authority that operates beneath language, beneath status, beneath appearance. At the core of this phenomenon lies a simple but unsettling mechanism of human psychology. Emotions are not merely private experiences, they are social signals. Every visible reaction transmits information about your internal condition. It reveals what affects you, what destabilizes you, what holds power over your state of mind. Most people move through life emotionally exposed without realizing the consequences. A small insult triggers irritation, a criticism sparks defensiveness, rejection produces visible discomfort. Each reaction becomes data for the observing world. And humans, whether consciously or instinctively, are constantly collecting this data. Because reactions create maps. Maps of vulnerability, maps of pressure points, maps of influence. Once someone understands what disturbs you, they understand how to affect you. Once they learn where your emotional balance weakens, they gain subtle leverage. This is not always malicious, it is simply embedded in social dynamics. Human interaction often contains quiet negotiations of control, influence, and dominance. Emotionally untouchable individuals disrupt this system entirely. Their reactions do not provide clear patterns. Their emotional responses do not create easy maps. And when predictable emotional feedback disappears, uncertainty takes its place. The human brain struggles with uncertainty. It searches for stability, for readable structure, for signals that define relational power. But emotional non-reactivity creates ambiguity. Ambiguity breeds tension, and tension in social environments often feels like intimidation. Humans are naturally drawn to patterns. We feel safe when we can anticipate reactions, predict outcomes, and sense our influence over others. But emotionally untouchable people shatter these expectations. Their calm, steady demeanor refuses to bend to provocation. Their silence in the face of insults, criticism, or manipulation unsettles those around them. What should trigger a reaction triggers none. What should create tension instead generates a quiet imbalance. This lack of predictable response creates subtle fear, not the fear of physical danger, but a deeper, more pervasive psychological discomfort. People feel powerless. They cannot easily read or influence someone who maintains unwavering emotional composure. This silent control threatens social instincts because most of our interactions operate on subtle dominance and influence. When those mechanisms fail, unease arises. It is precisely this discomfort that makes emotionally untouchable individuals intimidating. They do not seek to dominate with noise or aggression. Instead, their power is understated, psychological, and profoundly effective. Observers unconsciously register their stability and strength even when nothing is being said. And in environments filled with reactive minds, a single person who remains unshaken can subtly control the emotional rhythm of every interaction, commanding authority without demanding attention. The most dangerous aspect of being emotionally untouchable is not merely the discomfort it causes others, it is the strategic advantage it confers. Emotional reactions are currency in human relationships. They signal agreement, disagreement, engagement, and vulnerability. Most people spend their lives spending this currency unconsciously, reacting instantly to insults, provocations, or manipulations. In doing so, they reveal patterns, weaknesses, and predictable behaviors. But emotionally untouchable individuals withhold this currency. They do not react impulsively. They filter their responses. They control what the outside world perceives, which transforms simple interactions into calculated exchanges of power. This creates psychological leverage. By remaining unreadable, they prevent others from gaining influence over their state of mind.
In practical terms, this grants several advantages. They avoid unnecessary conflict, as provocations fail to provoke. They gain respect, because stability signals competence and inner strength. They manipulate indirectly, not through overt aggression, but through the silent pressure of their composure. They become unpredictable in the eyes of others, which makes them psychologically intimidating without ever appearing aggressive. Ultimately, the untouchable person operates from sovereignty over their own mind. While others react to external stimuli, they respond selectively, turning social interaction into a subtle game of power and control. And in that quiet mastery lies true influence.
The implications of emotional untouchability extend far beyond personal interactions. They shape career trajectories, social hierarchies, and even leadership dynamics. In the workplace, individuals who remain composed under pressure gain influence without overtly competing for attention. A colleague loses their temper during a meeting. Another becomes flustered by criticism. But the untouchable individual maintains equilibrium. Observers unconsciously assign authority to that stability, interpreting calmness as competence and reliability. Their ideas carry weight, not because of charisma, but because of control. Socially, this trait reconfigures relationships. Friends, peers, or even rivals struggle to manipulate or unsettle them. Attempts at provocation fail silently, leaving the instigator frustrated and uncertain. Emotional immunity effectively shifts the psychological balance, making the untouchable person a quiet pivot in any social scenario. Even strangers sense it instinctively, an aura of internal sovereignty that commands subtle respect and caution. Leadership, too, benefits from emotional discipline. Leaders who react impulsively transmit instability. Those who master their responses cultivate trust, admiration, and obedience. The unshakable mind operates strategically, turning ordinary circumstances into controlled environments. And those who underestimate this calm, silent power often find themselves caught in its quiet, pervasive influence. Emotional untouchability is not about suppressing feelings or becoming cold. It is about mastering them. It is about creating a space between stimulus and response, so that you are no longer at the mercy of the world's attempts to disturb you. Feeling remains, but reaction is deliberate, selective, and strategic. In this mastery lies power, because when others realize that their words, actions, or manipulations cannot penetrate your composure, something subtle but profound occurs. They begin to respect, fear, and often follow your lead without realizing it. This is the silent influence that Machiavelli hinted at centuries ago. Power does not always roar. Sometimes it whispers in unshakable stillness. In a society addicted to reaction, where most people hand over control of their emotions to circumstance, the ability to remain untouchable becomes a psychological weapon. It allows you to navigate social landscapes with authority, protect your inner stability, and manipulate outcomes without overt effort. The most dangerous presence in any room is rarely the loudest. It is the one who feels, sees, and thinks, but never reveals more than necessary. The one who commands attention not through volume or aggression, but through unyielding internal control. That is the mind that terrifies, influences, and ultimately dominates, without ever being touched.